Welcome to the debate. We thank you for making the time to listen to The Vanishing Middle Class, the gap between C-suite and entry level, episode number 11, a mini-series from EAQ and Associates, presenting human capital intelligence audio podcast to better understand the most effective ways to maximize human capital resources and how an organization can enhance performance, engagement, productivity, and deliver desired outcomes by creating alignment between management and their employees. So with that established, I want you to take a second and just picture a skyscraper in your mind.
Okay, I am picturing it.
Right. So you have got a sprawling, bustling lobby where everyone enters the building. And way up top, you have the gleaming penthouse suites. Now, imagine that same building is completely missing floors 20 through 40.
Wow, just empty space?
Exactly. There is no structural support. There are no stairs connecting the bottom to the top. It is just a massive, empty void. And when we look at the workforce data in 2026, that is the exact architectural blueprint of the modern corporation.
Yeah, it is a barbell economy. I mean, we are seeing a massive influx of entry-level talent at the bottom and then a highly compensated executive C-suite at the very top.
Right.
And there's just a gaping chasm right in the middle where the traditional career ladder used to be. The middle class of the corporate world is effectively disappearing.
Precisely. We are witnessing the hollowing out of the corporate middle class. And to help us frame this structural collapse, and more importantly, discuss how to actually rebuild it, we are looking to the program Human Capital Intelligence and its instructor, Ernest Goss.
A highly relevant perspective for this.
Oh, absolutely. He is a human resources practitioner, an executive coach, and a Six Sigma black belt. And throughout his career, Ernest Goss has worked with frontline employees, organized labor, managers, and executive leadership teams focused on outcomes for organizations. So his methodology gives us a very practical lens for what we are debating today.
Well, the problem itself is undeniable. The traditional mid-career professionals is effectively trapped in a professional desert right now. But how we fix it is where things get complicated.
And that brings us to our core disagreement. Because I believe there is a structural, operational solution to this void, which I call the bridge to the issue, partnering for a fair exchange.
Okay, break that down for me.
Well, we have to accept that the old corporate ladder is dead. It is a staircase with missing steps. You just can't climb it anymore. So to survive, organizations must actively build what we can think of as an architect's bridge.
Meaning what exactly in practice?
Meaning moving away from vague, hand-wavy career paths and shifting to highly specific growth bands. Employers offer predictable intermediate salary expansions, and in return, employees provide a quantifiable skill commitment.
A quantifiable skill commitment?
Right. They hit measurable mastery targets that trigger automatic upward movement. This structured, data-driven alignment is really the only way to replace the outdated peanut butter approach to pay.
Yeah. And I come at it from a different way. This fair exchange you are describing is a beautiful, elegant concept on paper.
But
in practice, it is fundamentally broken by modern macroeconomics and technology. I mean, if you look at the 2026 data from WTW and Mercer, salary budgets are completely stagnant.
they are tight, sure.
Tight is an understatement. We are looking at 3.2 to 3.4% overall budget increases for the year. Meanwhile, we are dealing with massive salary compression. You have new tech hires coming off the street and earning 12 to 18% more than tenured employees who are sitting in the exact same role.
Which is exactly why we need the growth bands.
But the math simply does not work. You cannot fund meaningful growth bands without robbing other employees to pay for them. And then, you add the aggressive rollout of artificial intelligence to the mix.
Right. AI is a major factor.
It is actively automating middle management administrative roles and doubling the number of direct reports per manager from 3 to 6. The money isn't there. And frankly, the roles aren't there either.
Well, we need to unpack that because I think you are misdiagnosing the budget issue. Let's start with that 3.4% figure. The money is there. It is simply being misallocated due to poor management practices.
Misallocated how?
Let's look at the math. The PayScale 2026 Compensation Best Practices Report reveals that 44% of organizations are still giving or considering giving what we call peanut butter pay increases.
Which we should probably define for anyone lucky enough to have never encountered it.
Right. Peanut butter pay is when a manager takes their meager 3.4% budget and just smears it thinly and evenly across their entire team.
Everyone gets a tiny slice.
Exactly. Everyone gets 3.4% regardless of their performance or their skill acquisition. And managers do this because they are afraid of conflict, They don't want to sit down and tell someone why they are only getting 1% while someone else gets 6%.
Sure, it is the path of least resistance.
But strategically, it is a massive failure. It doesn't reward your high performers, and it certainly doesn't fix internal inequity.
Well, it is a failure on a strategic level, sure. But on a human level, it prevents immediate mutiny. I mean, if you have a team of 5 people working hard and you tell 3 of them they're getting below inflation because you need to fund a growth band for the other 2, productivity plummets.
But that mutiny avoidance comes at the cost of the company's long-term survival. This is why we must look to the practical reality of execution. Ernest Goss, as an HR practitioner who has worked with frontline employees, organized labor, managers, and executive leadership teams focused on outcomes for organizations, brings a reality check here.
Okay, so what is the reality check?
That deep cross-functional experience proves that you cannot manage compensation with blunt instruments like peanut butter pay. You need targeted 5 to 10% budget allocations specifically designed for compression adjustments.
Wait, hold on. Let's explain salary compression for a second because it is the quiet killer of corporate morale.
Go for it.
So you have a loyal employee getting their standard 3% bump every year, and suddenly a brand new hire walks through the door making 15% more for the exact same job just because they were hired at today's market rate.
Exactly. And to fix that, you take the budget and you surgically apply a 5 to 10% compression pool to rebuild the growth bands of your most critical mid-level talent.
Surgically apply it.
Right. It is about strategic alignment. You reward those who are actually growing their skills and demonstrating measurable impact through that fair exchange.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. Let's put a human face on this data. Imagine Sarah, a dedicated mid-level marketing director. She logs in at 8:30 a.m. every single day.
Okay, Sarah at 8:30 a.m.
She has been with the company for 5 years, knows the systems inside and out, and mentors the junior staff. Under your architect's bridge model, the company needs to find a 5 to 10% compression pool to bump up Sarah's pay because a brand new graduate just got hired at a 6.9% premium.
Right.
So where does that 5 to 10% come from when the total budget pool approved by the board is strictly capped at 3.4%? I mean, WTW notes that 21% of employers are actually decreasing their pay budgets this year.
You reallocate it by identifying where the value is actually being generated.
But reallocating means taking from someone else. Funding the middle means someone else, perhaps a reliable, steady worker who does a great job but doesn't fit the shiny new quantifiable skill commitment criteria, gets a 0% increase while inflation eats their paycheck.
Well,
Creating a 5 to 10% compression pool in a 3.4% reality inevitably breeds internal resentment. You are trying to solve one inequity by manufacturing an entirely new one.
I am not convinced by that line of reasoning because you are treating the corporate budget as a static pie that exists in a vacuum. It isn't. When you implement the bridge to the issue, partnering for a fair exchange, you drastically reduce voluntary turnover.
Do you, though?
Yes, the data shows it. The PayScale report notes that voluntary turnover hit a low of 8% for companies utilizing strategic compensation. Think about the hidden costs here. When you stop bleeding your crucial mid-tier talent, people like Sarah, to your competitors, your talent acquisition costs plummet.
Okay, I see where you were going.
You aren't paying recruiter fees. You aren't losing 3 months of productivity while a new hire ramps up. You aren't just moving money around a spreadsheet. You are unlocking operational efficiency. When Sarah knows exactly what skills she needs to acquire to trigger a growth band expansion, she becomes incredibly focused, and the company reaps the financial benefit of that focus.
Focused or terrified? Because if we are talking about budgets, we have to follow the logical next step. If companies feel they can't afford that 5 to 10% compression pool to build your bridge, they look for a cheaper way out. They look to technology.
Ah.
And that brings us to the elephant in the room. You talk about growth bands, but the very roles that used to define the corporate middle class are being algorithmically eradicated.
You were talking about AI.
I am. Gartner's 2026 top workplace trends identified a phenomenon they are calling rifts before reality.
Reductions in force.
Yes, CEOs are so blindly optimistic about AI productivity that they are cutting headcount before the AI even proves it can do the job. Furthermore, Gartner warns of AI work slop, an overwhelming, mandated push for AI adoption that results in an abundance of fast but incredibly poor quality work.
I have seen that, yes.
The middle tier isn't just vanishing because of budget constraints. It is vanishing because AI is eating the administrative and analytical tasks that used to justify middle management in the first place. You are building a bridge to a destination that no longer exists.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. You are assuming AI is here to replace the driver.
It certainly feels that way to the workforce.
But AI is not an autopilot. It is a corporate GPS designed to navigate what is now a career lattice rather than a ladder. You are looking purely at the tasks AI eliminates, but you are completely ignoring the pathways it creates.
What pathways realistically?
Let's look at IBM. They're using their Watson X AI technology right now to create internal talent marketplaces. The AI analyzes an employee's current skills, cross-references their aspirations, and maps them to internal roles that the employee might never have considered.
So it acts as an automated career counselor?
Exactly. IBM has seen a 25% increase in internal moves using this technology. The traditional linear ladder where you just wait for your boss to retire so you can move up one rung is gone, yes, but it is being replaced by a dynamic career lattice.
A lattice.
Right. AI gives employees the autonomy to pivot horizontally, upskill rapidly, and become process experts rather than just task executors. AI is the tool that makes the quantifiable skill commitment trackable and achievable.
That is a highly sanitized utopian view of the human-machine era. Let's look at the actual human toll of this transition. An Upwork study recently showed that while AI gives middle managers a 42% productivity gain, a staggering 76% of those same managers are experiencing high burnout.
76%.
Yes. Why? Because McKinsey data shows that less than 30% of a manager's time is actually spent on people leadership. The rest of their day is administration, reporting, and logistics.
Which is exactly what AI is supposed to handle for them.
Right. But when you automate that administration, organizations don't give managers their time back so they can become better mentors. They just double their direct reports. So now you have our hypothetical manager, Sarah, exhausted, overseeing 6 people instead of 3.
Well, that is a management failure, not a structural one.
But it is the reality. She is dealing with cultural dissonance, the mental fitness costs of pervasive AI at work, and she is logging off at 6:15 p.m. completely drained. How can an exhausted, burnt-out manager effectively guide an employee through your beautifully designed architect's bridge?
She can guide them precisely because the architecture forces clarity. Without defined growth bands, career progression is a subjective, ambiguous negotiation between a burnt-out manager and a frustrated employee. It is a guessing game.
True.
With the architect's bridge, the expectations are codified. It is a defined contract. Achieve X, quantifiable skill, receive Y expansion. Sarah doesn't have to invent a career path for all 6 of her direct reports from scratch. The path is already built.
That is a compelling argument. But have you considered who is actually validating X and Y? The LinkedIn 2025 Workplace Learning Report provides a devastating counterpoint to your optimism about clarity.
Let's hear it.
According to their data, only 15% of employees say their manager helped build a career plan in the past 6 months. 15%! That is a 5% drop from the previous year.
Wow.
Managers are losing steam. They lack the time, the resources, and the energy. If managers are completely overwhelmed with larger teams, navigating the flood of AI work slop, and dealing with draconian budget constraints, who is actually enforcing these quantifiable skill commitments?
The fact that managers are overwhelmed is the exact reason why we need structural intervention. Relying on individual managers to organically design and track career paths for their direct reports is an obsolete model. It is too much friction. This is where the methodology of the program Human Capital Intelligence and its instructor, Ernest Goss, becomes absolutely vital.
By bringing in Six Sigma?
Exactly. He utilizes Six Sigma and data-driven architecture to solve these complex organizational problems. And let's break down what Six Sigma actually means in this context, because it sounds like industrial jargon.
It does a bit.
Think of Six Sigma like plumbing in that skyscraper we talked about earlier. If water isn't reaching the 30th floor, you don't just yell at the water, and you don't just tell the plumber to work harder. You find the leak, you measure the pressure, and you fix the pipe to remove the variance.
Okay, I follow the analogy.
When you apply that to human capital, you build automated, data-driven frameworks, the growth bands, that do the heavy lifting. The manager doesn't have to invent the path or manually track every single certification an employee gets. The path is mathematically modeled and transparent. The system tracks the skill acquisition. So Sarah, our burnt-out manager, simply transitions from being an administrator of tasks to a coach of outcomes. The friction is removed.
But you are assuming the outcomes are strictly measurable in a way that perfectly aligns with these Six Sigma growth bands. What happens when the skills required are highly contextual?
Give me an example.
Let's go back to the data. The LinkedIn report found that the number one skill lost to employee attrition right now is business strategy. Number two is strategic planning. You cannot easily quantify business strategy into a neat automated Six Sigma checklist.
It is harder, yes.
How do you measure a junior employee's ability to read a room during a tense negotiation? How do you quantify their knack for seeing a market trend 6 months before a competitor? These are complex human skills that require deep institutional knowledge and nuance.
Sure.
When you try to force complex career progression into rigid, automated growth bands just to satisfy an internal mobility metric, you risk losing the very critical thinkers you were trying to retain because they don't fit the algorithm.
Well, I wouldn't call growth bands rigid. I would call them explicit. The ambiguity of the past, that nuance you're defending, is exactly what led to the barbell economy in the first place.
You think nuance caused the gap?
Absolutely. When career progression is a mystery, employees assume the only way to get a real raise is to leave the company entirely. And the data overwhelmingly supports this need for explicit pathways. The LinkedIn Career Development Index shows that organizations prioritizing career development are 42% more likely to be frontrunners in generative AI adoption, and 75% are confident in their ability to be profitable. When you make the invisible visible, when you establish a fair exchange where learning leads directly to earning, you create a culture of continuous learning.
A culture of continuous learning is a noble goal, I will grant you that. But we keep crashing into the reality of the balance sheet. 51% of organizations, according to PayScale, cite balancing pay expectations with financial limits as their absolute number one challenge.
It is always a challenge.
But we are operating in an environment where 55% of companies are offering absolutely no premium, no bonus, and no equity for employees who have actively built out their AI skill sets.
Which is a huge mistake.
Think about what that means. The employer is essentially saying to the workforce, learn this new technology, increase your productivity by 42%, take on the work of the people we just laid off, but your salary will remain completely flat. That is not a fair exchange. That is extraction.
Which is precisely why the current model is failing. And it is exactly why the Architect's Bridge is a necessary evolution, not just a nice-to-have HR initiative. If an organization demands AI upskilling without compensation, they will suffer what Gartner calls regrettable retention.
Ah, quiet quitting's corporate cousin.
Exactly. That's the phenomenon where your disengaged employees stay, do the bare minimum to not get fired, and systematically damage the CEO's performance ambitions from the inside out. The fair exchange mandates that the quantifiable skill commitment is met with a financial expansion, period.
If they can fund it.
If the organization does not honor the expansion, the bridge collapses. But when they do honor it, when they apply the principles that Ernest Goss has championed with frontline employees and executive leadership teams alike, the mutual benefits are profound.
Look, I agree that the current model is failing, and the hollowing out of the middle is structurally dangerous for the economy and for individual businesses. If you don't have a middle class, you have no bench strength. You are forced to hire expensive external vice presidents who don't know your culture because you didn't cultivate them internally.
Exactly.
But I remain highly skeptical that data-driven growth bands can overcome the sheer gravitational pull of 3.4% budgets and algorithmic downsizing. The tension between the elegance of your architecture and the harsh, zero-sum financial realities of the modern corporation remains unresolved.
And it is a tension that every executive team must navigate if they want to survive this decade. But we must look at what is achieved when this bridge is successfully built, when an organization actually commits to the bridge, to the issue. Partnering for a fair exchange, we see definitive, transformative results on both sides of the equation.
Let's lay those out then.
Let's look at what the employer gains. A sustainable, internal talent pipeline that drastically reduces your reliance on expensive external headhunters. You gain men's strength, a middle class of leaders who are ready to step up, ensuring the organization doesn't collapse if a star leaves.
Right. And theoretically, if the funding is actually there, let's look at the other side, what the employee gains. A clear, predictable, and de-risk roadmap to financial and professional growth. You gain the psychological safety of knowing exactly what you need to do to increase your value, allowing you to stop looking for external leaps and start investing in internal steps.
Exactly. It is about moving from a culture of hoping for a raise to a system of earning and expansion. But as you have rightfully pointed out today, building that bridge while the tectonic plates of AI and macroeconomics shift beneath our feet is the defining leadership challenge of our time. Will companies invest in the structural integrity of their middle floors, or will they simply keep admiring the view from the penthouse while the building hollows out below them?
Thank you, everyone, for joining our three-part mini-series Human Capital Intelligence series presented by EAQ and Associates. We will continue to explore the intersection between business problems, operations, and strategy. HR architect Ernest Goes uses Six Sigma and data-driven architecture to solve complex organizational problems. We invite you to visit their website at eaqassociates.com. Join us for episode number 12. We will be discussing psychological safety. Can I disagree? In our next session.
Our goal is to equip you with the tools to turn your human capital into a sustainable competitive advantage and build the bridge that sustains a viable organization while creating opportunities for its employees. We'll see you next time.